What they don't need is to chase after this fraudulent, destructive, antediluvian thing called a BA. I think we better get the topic straight. When I agreed to debate on too many kids are going to college, I thought of college as being four-year colleges leading to the BA. I didn't think of it as a whole range of community colleges and the rest. Anyway, that's the way I'm going to argue tonight. Because if the proposition were that too many kids are trying to get more education and training after high school, I wouldn't have accepted the position on the affirmative. Almost everybody needs more education after high school. What they don't need is to chase after this fraudulent, destructive, antediluvian thing called a BA. The thesis of my argument really is that the BA is the work of the devil. Let's go through each of those accusations. First, fraudulent. The BA is supposed to signify, in a very old-fashioned term, that you are an educated man, now an educated person. You know and I know that it doesn't represent that anymore. The number of colleges that require the core courses that go into a liberal education is virtually not, don't exist. But it's much worse than that. If the only thing you know about a person is that that person has a BA, you don't know anything. If that seems too extreme, I can document all kinds of stories about courses in introductory economics, which use magazine articles as the text, about students who get a BA after 4 years without having to write a single solitary term paper, about exam scores, which by any traditional grading system means a D or an F, but guess what? They're transmuted into Bs. And why are they transmuted into Bs? Because the story they have now is retention, whereby the point of a college is to bring in as much tuition money as you can, and you got to retain kids. And in fact, if they want to drop out of courses and stay for 5 or 6 years instead of 4, that's just fine with the college. You can talk to employers all over the country who will tell you about applicants who have BAs, who can't write grammatical sentences in their applications and sometimes can't read very well. All of these things do not refer to the products of a few diploma mills. I am talking about large chunks of the second-tier and third-tier state college and university systems, and I'm also talking about large numbers of courses and students in the first-tier system and a whole lot of very expensive elite colleges. Knowing what major a person had doesn't tell you very much. If it's math, if it's hard sciences, if it's engineering, okay. But what does it mean if you have a political science degree, spoken as a person who has a political science degree? If you're going to an employer and saying, you ought to hire me, it doesn't really mean anything. Now, here's what you do know about a person with a BA, if you know what school they came from. So if the applicant came from Harvard, you know a whole lot about what that person was like at age 18 before he went to college. You know he had terrific SAT scores, then you know he had a terrific high school record or he wouldn't have gotten in. You don't know anything about what Harvard has added. And as a graduate of that institution, trust me, I am living proof of that statement in a whole bunch of ways. None of this should be news to any of you. The retreat of the Academy from rigorous education is known to everybody who's in higher education, except for majors in engineering, math, and the hard sciences, which account for just 12% of undergraduates. The bachelor's degree all by itself is meaningless. Okay, destructive. Even though we know that the BA is substantively meaningless, it remains true that for millions of jobs, you can't get a job interview unless you have one. And the problem is that employers are behaving rationally when they do that, because you've got about 32% of adults that have a BA. The employers know how clueless many of them are. Why should they go outside that pool and take even lower levels of the population in terms of their ability? So they're being rational, but the problem is this. We have created a kind of self-fulfilling prophecy. We have created a culture in which not having a BA labels you, in the minds of way too many people, as being either dumb or lazy. And so a lot of ambitious kids who have no interest in sitting in classrooms for 4 years and accumulating these large student loan debts, nonetheless want the piece of paper. It is not surprising that we have all the horror stories, which are documented in journal articles and large surveys, not anecdotally, of kids who take the easiest possible classes and don't study. They aren't there to get an education, they're there to get a piece of paper. It is hugely destructive to have created this kind of false credential. It is destructive to the majority of young people who don't try to go to college because they know college is not for them. It is destructive for about 40% of those who start college who never finish. But most of all, it is destructive to America's civic culture. We have always prided ourselves upon the idea that everybody is equal in all the ways that count with regard to human dignity. We have given a meaningless educational credential a role in our culture that says otherwise. Antediluvian. I have time just to state the proposition and hope to have a chance to elaborate later. The 4-year brick and mortar college is obsolete. 4 years is almost always too long. There's hardly any profession that requires 4 years of classwork. The rationale for a big physical plant and a residential college is just vanishing. What's the rationale for having a library these days? It used to be central. Why should it be that the brilliant professor giving a lecture where he doesn't take any individual relationships with students, but just giving a superb lecture, why is he giving that lecture to 150 kids who happen to be sitting in the hall? Why isn't it being given to millions? Distance education has all sorts of possibilities it didn't have before. The information revolution is giving us a cornucopia of new ways to help kids get an education. Well, that just begins to say what I want to say, but what I'm really coming down to is nobody should go to college as the system is now defined. What we need is a transformation that gives young people a chance to tell employers, or for that matter to tell graduate admissions officers, what they know and what they can do, not where they learned it and how long it took them. Thank you.